The Darksaber is an elegant weapon, but the true rightful owner of it is still confusing in Star Wars to this day. There's been a lot of owners of this saber, including Sabine Wren, Din Djarin, and Darth Maul being one of the main ones who owned this in the Clone Wars. Recently in The Mandalorian, Bo-Katan has elite ownership of it, as Din Djarin gave it to her recently in Season 3. Now that Season 3 is over and the Darksaber has been destroyed in the recent episode, I guess we can go into more depth of the Darksaber, as it probably will return in the future if there will be a new one, and the rules will probably change if there is a new Darksaber created. Today I'm going to talk about who is the actual owner of it, by the rules of it, and how it gets passed down to people, to person, beating someone in combat. So if you do enjoy this video today, please like, subscribe, and let's get straight into it. So there are a lot of characters who are candidates for this, including Luke Skywalker, which might be confusing to some fans, but I'll get into it in a bit. So there are a lot of people who could have ownership to this saber, but the rules are, confusing, and it seems like they get changed a lot in Star Wars. But yeah, we'll just have to, dive deep into this and have a look of who could actually be the rightful owner of this saber. Now, Darth Maul was the owner of this saber in the Clone Wars. That was the first time we saw it in, Star Wars history. It's the first time we saw it in Star Wars, live action or animated. That was the first time we saw it. Pre-Vizsla, of course, had ownership of it before that. Darth Maul beat him in combat, and he took the Darksaber and ruled Mandalore. Of course, then he tried taking it back, but Maul was the ruler of Mandalore because he had ownership of the Darksaber. He had the ownership of the Darksaber for some time, and when him and his brother Savage fought Palpatine on Mandalore, he was beaten, of course. Now people think that Palpatine is the owner of this saber, which is a valid reason, and is valid because he beat Maul in combat, and Maul was actually in possession of it. He was using it against Sidious. So realistically, Sidious should be the owner of the Darksaber. Obviously, Maul still had it in his possession. He had it on his possessions on Dathomir, as we saw in Rebels. Obviously, Sabine Wren Ezra took it, and obviously Sabine Wren had it, and then we saw it from there. Of course, Sabine Wren then gave it to Bo-Katan, which is forbidden. It is against the rules of the Darksaber. You're not allowed to just give it to someone. It has to be won in combat. And then she obviously gets given it again in The Mandalorian when Din Djarin beats Moff Gideon. And obviously Moff Gideon took it from Bo-Katan the first time, obviously, when she had it from Sabine Wren. So she had it for quite a few years. Bo-Katan had the Darksaber for quite a few years. But that doesn't cover up the fact that she got given it to her. Now, this is where it gets, it gets interesting, because obviously if we go down the route of Sidious owning it, because he beat Maul, in combat in the Clone Wars, really he should have ownership of it. He is the true owner of the Darksaber, before all of this. So he beat Maul in combat in the Clone Wars, and then as time goes on, we obviously know what happened. We know what happens. Vader obviously kills Palpatine, beating him in combat, throwing him off the second Death Star, and obviously as we thought, killed him, but didn't kill him really. But obviously then Vader then takes, I guess, ownership of the Darksaber, and really Luke killed Vader and redeemed Anakin. Obviously Anakin died as well. So really, is Luke really the owner of the Darksaber? It feels like he is, because if we're going down that route, then obviously it feels like, obviously Vader killed Palpatine. Obviously he beat him in combat, so he takes the Darksaber. Vader died. Luke was there, so really Luke takes ownership of the Darksaber. Obviously they didn't have it in their possession though, so they aren't the leader of Mandalore. They didn't have it on them. So we go down, I guess, what we have in canon of Star Wars at the moment, which is obviously Bo-Katan owning the Darksaber, or she did own the Darksaber before it got destroyed by Moff Gideon. And so the ownership and, people owning it is very confusing in Star Wars. There's been so many people, Pre-Vizsla, Darth Maul, Moff Gideon, Sabine Wren, Bo-Katan, Din Djarin. There's been so many people that have owned it and have possession of it, but, we don't really know who the true the true owner of it is, at this point in Star Wars, who the true owner of the Darksaber is. We've seen so many people people in combat who have had ownership of the Darksaber, but obviously they didn't have it in their possession. So if they don't have it in their possession, I guess they don't own it. But of course, when Darth Maul lost to Sidious in Clone Wars, he had the Darksaber on him because he was using it against Sidious. So if we're going by that logic, then surely Sidious owns the Darksaber because he beat Maul in combat. I know he didn't take it, but even so, he still beat Maul in combat, which still makes him the owner of the Darksaber. Going into that, obviously Vader killed him, and Luke technically killed Vader, bringing back, I guess, Anakin, and obviously Anakin then died as well. So technically, Luke is the rightful. It seems like if we're going down that logic, Luke is the rightful owner of the Darksaber. Obviously, we're going off Star Wars at the moment and the writers and what they've done. So I guess we have to go off the rules of what they've done so far in Star Wars and that logic, not the logic of what actually makes sense. But if we were going off that logic, then I guess Luke Skywalker is the true owner of the Darksaber, which is quite interesting. But of course, we're not going down that road. We're going down the road of what's actually canon. So at the moment, Bo-Katan is the rightful owner of the Darksaber. But I think this is an interesting theory of who is the rightful owner. I'd like to hear your guys' theories on this. Who do you think is the actual owner and the rightful owner of the Darksaber? Obviously, then Maul lost to Obi-Wan in Rebels. Obviously, he killed him, so technically Maul was no longer owner of the Darksaber there, but obviously he didn't have the Darksaber on him because it got taken from him by Sabine Wren. So yeah, it's very confusing. It can go down so many different roads of who actually owns it, but I think it's an interesting, the rules are very interesting. I think who actually owns it is interesting as well. But tell me what you guys think of this. I hope you enjoyed the video, and may the Force be with you.